Likuti Pekudei Maimer Alf. Pekudei Mishkan Hoidis Ugemer. Several questions are known on these verses. Why does it say Mishkan twice? Also, it says Shapakad Api Moshe when it seemingly should have said Shapakad Moshe. And it says Avodas Halavim. What connection does the service to the Levites, which was to carry the Mishkan during the journeys, have to do with Pekudei Mishkan? And it says Avodas Halavim Pekudei Summary. So why is not mentioning what was under Elazar? These questions are explained by the Alshich. The idea is that the Mishkan represents the dwelling of the Shekhinah within the Yidden, as it says V'shachanti b'Sechem, and it also says Heichal Hashem Hema. This is the meaning of the teaching of the Chacham Nisabek the Baruch Hu Lias Loi Dida B'Tachtonim. But this requires explanation. Does it not already say as Shemayim B'Sat and Imodi which fulfills already the whole world? The explanation is that this dwelling means a revealed manifestation of godliness, and this specifically in Tachtonim. Lower does not mean a physical place because he is not defined by a place. It says in the Makamiti. Rather, higher and lower refers to levels in spiritual rank. This world is the lowest level, the end and conclusion of the entire chain of worlds, and therefore the perception of godliness here is in great concealment and contraction. As it says, yet precisely here, the Holy One desired that there be a dwelling and revelation of his godliness to illuminate the darkness itself. This happens through Torah mitzvahs, as is known for the teaching of because through them one draws down a revelation of godliness that is even higher than the level revealed in the world to come. This drawing down of the dwelling and revelation comes through a skafri sita achra. So doing the achra, yitzhar, as it says in the Zohar. First there must be a skafia, and afterwards it's hapshas and haida, transforming darkness into light. This skafia applies in all five senses: in sight, in hearing, likewise in speech and action, also in thought and emotions of the soul. Through this one comes to this hapcha, so that the five senses in the person's thought themselves become vessels for the light of Ein Sof Baruch Hu. This is the meaning of Hechal Hashem Himla said about the Yidden. Hechal Havaya means that the mitzvahs depend on the divine name Havaya, as will be explained. It's a say correspond to Vavke, it's a less correspond to Yudke. Through fulfilling the positive and negative commandments, one becomes a Hechal, a vessel for the relation of the name Havaya itself. This is the meaning of V'shachanti b'Sechem, as we'll explain further in the idea of Pekudei Mishkan Ho'edus. This is also the meaning of the teaching that There's two Torah mitzvahs. They draw upon themselves the revelation of Ein Sof, which is the level of Kaddish Muvdal. Therefore, corresponding to the threshold, to the threefold Kaddish, it says of them, Hechel Hashem Hema, 3 times. These correspond to the 3 garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action, through which all the mitzvahs are performed. Through these, the dwelling in the lower worlds is accomplished, so that the souls within physical bodies in this world become vessels for the level of Kaddish, as it says, the Kibbutz Kaddish. This is V'shachanti b'Sechem, and all of this comes through is Skafius, the after turning away from evil and doing good. Kitzer, the idea of the Mishkan is Mishkan B'Sechem, a dwelling in the lower world, accomplished through a Skafia and a Hapcha. Hechel Hashem Hema said 3 times, corresponding to the threefold Kaddish base. It is still necessary to understand why the glory of the Holy One descends specifically through a Skafia Safra, and since the Safra itself has no real standing in the order of creation, it says Shema must be dying to Tapas. The explanation will be this by first explaining the root of the mitzvah say and mitzvah slice. It says that it is known from Tikkun Nezer on the pasuk Shmi Shmi with Yudke is corresponds to the Shasal and Vavke with Zikhi corresponds to the Mach Mitzvah say. Now Yudke is higher than Vavke, so Yudke is a complete name by itself. Thus, in Yehesh Meid Abba, the meaning is the great name Yudke. Also, as it says in the start of Lekeno, Yudke corresponds to the hidden, while Vavke corresponds to the revealed. Therefore, the negative commandments are rooted higher than the positive ones. Accordingly, if someone transgresses a positive commandment, then repentance is immediately forgiven. But regarding a negative commandment, repentance only suspends the punishment. This is because the negative commandments derive from the higher level of Yudke. This means puzzling. Positive commandments involve an action that draws down godliness. A machpa couldn't hit a machpa in the malka, but a negative commandment involves no action at all. One simply refrains from sin. How can this be greater than performing a mitzvah? The answer is that precisely because the negative commandments come from such a high source, Yudke, they have no vessels except through Sheval Tasa, refraining. This is the meaning of Va'adat Slazadua, the planting is through Loy, through the observance of the prohibitions. This draws from a level described as Loy Yashav Sham, higher than the level of positive commandments, which correspond to Adam, than Machavar and the Malka. To understand this further, consider the positive commandments as the 248 limbs of the king, and the negative commandments as the 365 sinews through which the blood flows. A limb is a vessel for the life of the soul clothed within it, like intellect in the brain, the power of action in the hands. As explained in Tanya Pekudei Aleph, the life that animates the limbs is only revelation and ray from the soul. The soul itself does not divide the limbs. Rather, revelation from it shines into the brain, and from there extends to other limbs, each receiving the life appropriate to its nature. Yet its vitality in each limb remains united with the essence of the soul. The soul itself thinks in the brain and speaks through the mouth. When the soul departs from the body, all these powers depart with it. The vitality in each limb is therefore united with the soul itself, though each limb remains in its own distinct vessel. Similarly, above, the Malka correspond to the teaching of the divine vitality that flows from Ein Sof Baruch Hu becomes clothed in the midah of Chesed, which is Sfira of Chesed, which is called Rei Midah, an arm, a vessel for that simple divine chayes. Although the light, the earth, the clothes in this Sfira is clothed in the Sfira. It remains united with its source in the infinite, just as the chayes of a limb, the Eva remains united with the soul. Thus, either Sheyachad, he and his chayes are one, either Gomerchad, he and his Sfiras are completely unified. This drawing down of the infinite light into the Malka. But in the Malka happens through the 248 positive commandments, through acts of tzedakah and sudden. Light flows into the Sfira of Chesed, the right arm. Through the mitzvah of dinim, it flows to the kavur, the left arm. Likewise, when a person conquers the inclination, will give a kevish yutzah. This draws down the quality of gura above. Based on this, the advantage of Torah study over all the other mitzvahs can also be understood. There are two levels within the idea of the 248 limbs. One level is the outer limbs, and the other is the inner limbs. In a physical person, the inner organs contain a deeper, more essential life force than the outer limbs. Because of this, most internal organs become invalid, even with the smallest puncture, which is not the case with the external limbs. The parallel above can be understood as follows. Even though the divine has no body and no form, nevertheless, Torah speaks in human language, and there are also levels of inner and outer there. In general, the mitzvah of Torah study corresponds to speak to the inner organs. Torah comes from Chachma. It says, that wisdom caused the person's face to shine. Like a story of Rabbi Abba, whose face shone when he discovered a new teaching, through a new insight. In Torah, there was an illumination in the face. In the same way above, Torah study draws down the level of Yarish and Panav, a revelation of the divine face, meaning this inner light. This is also the meaning of the teaching of the Chachamim called Pekudei Summary. Whoever reads and learns, the Holy One reads and learns the opposite him. What this means is that a revelation of Ein Sof becomes manifest in Chachmei law. By its nature, the infinite light is far beyond the level of Chachma. So when it is revealed there, it's considered a revelation of inner essence. It is like the brain in the head, where the deepest life force of the soul is revealed. This is what is meant by However, when it comes to the mitzvahs in action, the divine flow is in the level of the outer limbs. For example, through acts of kindness and charity, the flow is drawn into the attribute of chesed, the right arm. And similarly, for other mitzvahs, this is why Torah is equal to all the mitzvahs because they correspond to the inner dimension, just as in the human body. The life force within the brain includes the vitality of all 248 limbs, as explained in Tanya Perek Nun Aleph. So to the Torah is the mind of all the mitzvahs. It is the level of Mishan of the Ramban, as explained elsewhere. This is also the meaning of the pasuk Vaniglos Lan Levanein, referring to Torah mitzvahs which correspond to the letters Vavke of the divine name. The letter Vav corresponds to Torah study. Through it, the Holy One reads and studies opposite the person. The letter He corresponds to the performance of mitzvahs. This is the meaning of Zishri Vavke, whose numerical value is 248, meaning that through the positive mitzvahs, the union of Vavke is drawn down. According to the explanation of the Gemara in Pesach, and Zikr refers to the way the name of Avaya is pronounced as Adlos. It observes the mitzvah of Kabbalah like a servant serving his master, which is represented by the name Adna. Therefore, Zikr in Vavke means that through the positive mitzvahs, the name of Avaya is revealed within the name Adlos, similar to the idea expressed in the pasuk for Hashem Behechel Kotri. It is also related to the intention of Saint Amen, which joins together the names Avaya and Adna. Kitzer, the pasuk Shmi and Yudke correspond to the 365 prohibitions. The Zikr and Vavke corresponds to the 248 positive mitzvahs. The positive mitzvah, 240 limbs of the king, to which the divine light is drawn down into the attributes like chesed. Torah, however, corresponds to the inner limbs, the inner dimension of all the mitzvahs. Gimel, but Shmi im Yudke Shasar Loisese means the 365 Loisese is drawn for the level of Yudke, about which it said, V'hanestaris l'Hashem Elokeinu, the hidden things belong to Hashem. This level is higher than Vavke. The explanation of why they're called Nestaris, hidden, referring to the level of Yudke, is as follows. It's written, wisdom is found from Ayin. Wisdom is the first point of revelation in the chain of existence, and it corresponds to the letter Yud of the Abish's name. About this, the sages say, with the letter Yud, the world to come was created from Chachma. The flow continues into Bina, which is understanding and comprehension of God, and from there comes the root of the world to come, where the souls sit and enjoy the radiance of the Shekhinah. This is the idea of Lahanchil La'oyav Ayesh, to grant. This is the concept of Yesh Mi'ayin. Chachma itself is still called Ayin, the power of Ma, because it comes from Ayin. Like it says, Ayin Timatze. However, from the Ayin from which Chachma comes is a level that's before the whole chain of divine emanations represented by the name Havaya. About this, it says in Sefer Yitid Lifnei Echad Ma'at Sefer. And it's, as it is said, Antuchad V'lebuchur, from that level is beyond all comprehension revelation. The latest Machshot Tzvisa Beklal, only Chacham, which comes from this hidden source, is the first revelation. This is what the sages meant when they said, like the creation of the world, first darkness, and afterwards light. Light refers to Chachma, the first point of revelation. For Chachma to emerge from the hidden source, it must first be concealment. Level beyond Chachma cannot be revealed openly, so first it must be hidden. About this, it says, through this concealment, afterward, the light of Chachma emerges. The beginning of revelation is hinted in the letter Yud, which is only a single point. The main source remains concealed, which is revealed. What is revealed from there is only a tiny illumination, a small point, the Yud. The hidden source. This hidden source is what is called Hanastarish, the concealed word. It is also called Ma'amok, depth, as it says. From this level comes the root of the negative commandments, because this hidden level cannot be revealed directly, not even in the highest world, since the only kind of awareness possible of that level is to know that it cannot be grasped. This is called knowledge by negation. For example, he's wise but not with a known kind of wisdom. We cannot grasp the essence of that wisdom. We can only say that it is not what it is not. It is not like created wisdom. Created wisdom is something added to a being, whereas in him, he and his wisdom are one. Likewise, human intellect cannot create anything from nothing, yet the divine wisdom creates existence from nothing, as it says, B'chachma asisa. How this happens cannot be understood. We can only say that it is not like created wisdom. Even within this knowledge by negation, there are endless levels of understanding. We can only understand that it is not comparable to human wisdom, but there are infinitely higher levels of wisdom. Wisdom of the spiritual world, Gan Eden, and beyond, and each level perceives more deeply what it means that the divine wisdom is not like any known wisdom. From this level comes the negative commandments. Their nature is also negation. Because their source is in the hidden level of which cannot yet be revealed positively, therefore it can only be expressed through negation. For this reason, the vessel below to draw down this level cannot be a positive action. A positive mitzvah involves a vessel. For example, an esrog serves as a vessel for the light drawn through the mitzvah. That corresponds to the revealed level of Vodke, which become revealed within vessels. But the hidden level, cannot be grasped in any vessel, since it can only be accessed through refraining from something that opposes holiness. For example, forbidden fats oppose and conceal the divine presence, which can only dwell where there is bittul, self-nullification. That is the level of Chachma, the power of Ma. Therefore, Chachma is called Emes, as explained elsewhere. Through this bittul, a tiny glimmer of revelation from Yashid Chayshich Sistrei can shine within Chachma, as explained earlier in the idea of Beishach Shecha V'Hadur Neheda. Therefore, Eden Kalev opposes and blocks the state of bittul and prevents that revelation. But when a person refrains from a transgression that presents itself, he draws from the hidden level of Yudke, because that level can only be drawn through negation by refusing what opposes holiness. As it says, do not make a void or deficiency. Through refraining, holiness can then dwell. This is the meaning of Bad Zerua. The law of the negative commandments is higher than the cane of the positive commandments, because first hidden darkness, Yashish Chayshach Sisrai. Explanation of Shmi in Yudke. According to the Gemara, Pesachim, Shmi refers to the name of Avayas that is written. So what does Shmi in Yudke mean? One explanation is based on the pasuk Ozi V'Zimas Ka. The Medrash says that in this world we praise him with 2 letters, but in the future world with 6 letters. It says Kivaka Hashem Torilam. That refers to the future time when the hidden level of Yudke, which is now concealed in the depth and does not openly sustain the worlds, will become revealed. At present, the life force of the worlds only comes mainly from Vavke, but in the future, the level of Yudke will also be revealed. Therefore, the praise will include the entire name. Another explanation is based on the pasuk V'Shmi Avaya Lo Nidati Lahem. Doesn't say I did not make a know, but Lo Nidati I was not known, meaning revelation of the level of Yachid, the deepest essence. The Shmi Im Yudke means the deeper level of the name Avaya becomes revealed through the fulfillment of the negative commandments. This is also connected with the teaching that when the Yidden answer Yehesh Merabah Mavarach, the Holy One nods his head, indicating the drawing down of that hidden level into revelation. Kitzer, pasuk teaches that first there is concealment, and afterward revelation. From this hidden level come the negative commandments, because that level cannot be grasped positively, but only through negation by refraining from what blocks holiness. This is the meaning of Shmi Im Yudke. Daled. This is the meaning of the pasuk Sham al Shvat Mishivti Yudke. This Yisrael Haydus Hashem Hashem. Shisham all refers to Yerushalayim, about which it says Yerushalayim Abnei Keshachobra Yachta. The Gemara explains that Keshachobra law means that the earthly Yerushalayim is joined with Yerushalayim above. As the Chacham say, among the 7 heavens there is Zvul, where there exists a heavenly Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash and the Mizbeach. Thus, Sham Allah means that when the Jewish people would ascend 3 times a year to the earthly Yerushalayim to appear before Hashem, they were in fact ascending in both Yerushalayim, the one below and the one above. according to its simple meaning, Yerushalayim below is the city of the land of Israel. But there are deeper levels. Yerushalayim below corresponds to the divine name Adonai, who's the Merkavah, equals Heichal. It is the palace for the name Havaya. As it says, V'Hashem Beichel Kadshe. This represents the union of the letters Vavke. But the Yerushalayim above represents the union of Chachma and Bin, the union of the letters Yudke. The word Yerushalayim itself means Yireh Shalom, complete awe. There are two levels of awe, Yireh Tata and Yireh Ilah. Likewise, there are two levels of peace. It's a Shalom Shalom. These correspond to the two divine unions mentioned earlier. The level of Yud-K drawn through the negative commandments, the level of Vav-K drawn through the positive commandments. Thus, there is Yireh Shalom below associated with Vav-K and Yireh Shalom above associated with Yud-K. When the tribes ascended to the earthly Yerushalayim through performing the positive mitzvahs, they also rose spiritually in both realms. Regarding the higher Yerushalayim, it says Shiftei Yud-K Edis Liyisrael. The higher Yerushalayim represents the union of Yud-K, and therefore the souls are called Shiftei Yud-K. The phrase Edis Liyisrael means testimony. Testimony is only needed for something hidden and unseen. Something visible requires no witness. Even something that will soon become revealed does not require testimony. Thus, the phrase Edis Liyisrael refers to Yerushalayim above the level of Yud-K, which is called Amadis Gatzia, the hidden world. By contrast, the level of Vav-K, where divine light becomes revealed within the vessels, is called Amadis Galia, the revealed world. This corresponds to Yerushalayim below. This is the meaning of Zichri and Vav-K. The word Zichri refers to the name Adonai, which corresponds to the earthly Yerushalayim. Since this level belongs to the earthly chain of worlds becomes revealed, it does not require testimony. But Yud-K is the hidden world beyond the chain of creation that cannot be grasped by any vessel. Since therefore its relation is called Eidos. The word Eidos shares the same letters as Des, knowledge, as it says, V'yakim Eidos Biankiv and V'Eidusi Zoy Alamde. This parallels the difference between Mamad Kalam and Sev Kalam. Regarding the level that fills the world, it says it can be perceived, but regarding the level that surrounds the world, it says V'Aminu B'Hashem. Yet even that can ultimately become known in the sense of Das, a deep inner awareness. Another example of Eidos is the western lamp, the Ner HaMaravi, in the Beis Mikdash. The Chacham say that it was a testimony, it was an Eidos that the divine presence rested among the Yidden. The Kayin placed the same amount of oil in that lamp as in the others, yet it burned longer than all of them. Although this was a physical phenomenon, it served as an Eidos for the spiritual reality of the divine presence. Likewise, certain miraculous events in the Beis Mikdash served as an Eidos, such as the people standing crowded together but bowing with ample space. Though the miracle itself was physical, it testified to a higher spiritual reality. In the same way, the mitzvahs themselves are called Eidos. For example, Tzitzis corresponds to the spiritual image described as Sadeh Sheikh Amar Nake. Tefillin corresponds to the tefillin of the Mariam. Sukkah corresponds to the supernal encompassing lights. Through the physical mitzvah, though the physical mitzvahs are not comparable in essence to these spiritual realities, they serve as testimony to them. Similarly, with the Torah itself, the hidden dimensions of Torah belong to Hashem, and yet from the revealed Torah we can perceive hints of the hidden. Just as from the fact that the body lives and speaks, we know that it has a soul. So to the physical mitzvahs testify to their spiritual inner meaning. Thus, Eidos Liyisrael, the word Yisrael refers to the supernal man upon the divine throne. This corresponds to Yud-K. This corresponds to Vav-K, the revealed level in relation to Yud-K, the hidden level. Nevertheless, a revelation from Yud-K does not extend into Vav-K. It does extend into Vav-K. This occurs to the drawing of Melchon, intellectual light into the emotional attributes. However, the light becomes contracted so that it can be contained within vessels. Even so, it remains rooted in Yud-K, far higher than Vav-K, and therefore it is called Eidos, testimony to the hidden source. Yashes Cheshech Sistrei. This also applies within every Jew, as the Medrash says. Ka Meid Aleim Shehein B'nei Avoisehen. Hashem himself testifies the Yidden are truly the descendants of their forefathers. The reason is that within every Yid there is a reflection of the divine name Havaya. The letter Yud represents the power of Bittul, self-nullification beyond the rational understanding. The letter Hey represents contemplation of the greatness of Hashem. These two levels are called today and day and the limit. Inspiration, two companions that never separate. The contemplation Hey is a palace for the point of the Bittul Yud. This is the meaning of Ka Eidos Liyisrael. This revelation is drawn down through the observance of the negative commandments. His essence is Gaffi, self-restraint and nullification. Thus, Sham Alu Lahidus to Shem Hashem. The word Lahidus means acknowledgement and submission to something beyond understanding. That which lays Meshchavat Fisa Beklal. There is a difference between bracha and Eidah. Blessing means drawing down a revelation. Acknowledgement refers to accepting something that is beyond comprehension. This parallels the difference between positive and negative commandments. Positive commandments correspond to Vav-K, where the divine light becomes revealed within the vessels like a blessing. Therefore, blessings are recited on many positive commandments. But the negative commandment corresponds to Vav-K, the hidden world, the Yud-K, the hidden world, which cannot be grasped in revelation, and is therefore approached only through acknowledgement. For this reason, they involve not action, but refraining. This is the meaning of Shiftei Yud-K, this Lisol Hashem Hashem. Through this, we can understand why subduing the Stachar causes the glory of Hashem to ascend. This corresponds to negative commandments. The one closes the eyes from seeing evil, and restrains the senses and refuses to follow improper desires. By removing the concealment that blocks holiness, this awakens and draws on the level of Yudkei, the hidden dimension of an Estar Shisham Elkeinu. Kitzer, Shisham refers to the union of the two Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim Lamata corresponds to the level of Vavkei, while Yerushalayim Lamaila corresponds to the hidden level Yudkei. Because the higher level is concealed, its revelation appears as testimony Aegis. The mitzvahs themselves serve as testimony to these hidden spiritual realities through the negative commandments. In the state of Bittul, the hidden level of Yudkei becomes drawn down into revelation. This is the meaning of Eile Pekudei Mishkan Mishkan Oedus. The pasuk says the Mishkan twice, referring to the two levels mentioned before, Yerushalayim below and the city that is joined with it above. Through the positive commandments, the union of Vavkei of the divine name is made. This is the meaning of Mishkan in the simple sense. The dwelling of the Shekhinah, the final hay of the divine name that rests among the Yidden and becomes united with the Vav. This is like the idea of Kodesh with the Vav, where a ray of the higher holiness is drawn down through the letter Vav. This happens through the 240 positive mitzvahs. After that comes Mishkan Ho'edis, which corresponds to the level of Yudkei. This is the higher holiness beyond the level of Kodesh B'Vav, is drawn down through the negative commandments. The commission is as follows. The word Eila and Eila Pekudei is related to the pasuk Su'umar Menechem Berumi Bara Eila. The word Eila indicates revelation, while Mi indicates something hidden, something whose essence is unknown. The idea is that Eila refers to the divine attributes which belong to the revealed realm. These attributes are born from understanding and contemplation, which is the level of Bina called Mi. As explained in the pasuk L'cha Hashem Gdula V'Goda Tferes, the 6 attributes are all nullified in their source. L'cha Hashem, the letters L'cha hint to me about Eila. The 6 attributes are called Eila because each attribute includes all 6. 6 times 6 is equals 36, which is the numerical value of Eila. The letters of Eila also rearranged to form Leah, who give birth to 6 sons, corresponding to the 6 attributes. Thus, Eila corresponds to the letter Vavkei, to the letter Vav, the divine name, the 6 attributes, each containing 6. This is also the meaning of the 6 orders of the Mishnah, which correspond to the 6 spiritual attributes. Each order includes aspects of the others. For example, the order of Zerayim contains laws related to other areas as well, and so on. Because each includes the others, their structure reflects the number Eila. This is the meaning of Eile Pekudei Mishkan. The word Pekudei relates to in teaching to the sages that a husband must visit his wife. The term Pekudei refers to union. Thus, Pekudei HaMishkan means the union of the Shekhinah, the final hay of the divine name with Vav, because the Shekhinah is the source of the souls of the Yidden. This union, the union of Vavkei, is brought about to the level of Eila, which refers to the 6 orders of the Mishnah, the Torah study, which corresponds to the Vav. The union of Vavkei takes place. This is the union of Pekudei that is created through Torah study. The term Pekudei refers to Kodesh with a Vav, the flow from the higher holiness that into the level that fills the worlds, which is called the Shekhinah. This same union also happens to the 248 positive commandments, which are also called Eila. This is Eila. A mitzvah Eila is a chukim and Eila Moed Hashem. Therefore, the pasuk is Pekudei in the plural because each mitzvah draws down a specific form of union according to its particular spiritual root. Thus, this explains the medrash on the pasuk in Echal Eila Nibrechia. The medrash explains that it refers to the destruction of Torah study and the cessation of sacrifices. It says Eila Chukim Mishpatim and Eila Tasul Hashem B'Maydechem. Through these practices, the revelation of Eila was drawn down, the flow of the transcendent divine light into the imminent light of the world. Therefore, when the temple was destroyed, it says Al Eila Nibrechia. The revelation called Eila was withdrawn and returned to its concealed source. As there says, when the Vav was removed from the Shekhinah, Rachel wept. All of this refers to the Mishkan. The simple sense corresponds to the letters Vavkei, the revealed realm. The word Eila itself implies revelation, but Mishkan HaEdus refers to the higher Mishkan, corresponding to Yerushalayim above, level of Yudkei, which is the hidden realm. Therefore, it is called Mishkan HaEdus because testimony relates specifically to something hidden. This is like the phrase Shift the Yudkei Edus L'Yisrael. The union of Yudkei is drawn down through the negative commandments, whose root is in the level of Yudkei. These 2 levels correspond to Shechinta Tata and Shechinta Ilah, lower and higher aspects of the divine presence. They also correspond to the 2 levels of self-sacrifice in the Shema. The first verse corresponds to the Mishkan HaEdus, and the V'ahavta corresponds to Mishkan in its revealed form. Kitzer, the words Mi Bara Eila describe the relationship between the hidden source Mi and the revealed attributes Eila. The 6 attributes correspond to the letter Vav and to the 6 orders of the Mishnah through Torah and positive commandments. The union of Vavkei. This is Pekudei Mishkan, but Mishkan HaEdus refers to the higher hidden level of Yudkei drawn down through the negative commandments. Vav, to understand a bit more deeply the meaning of Mishkan HaEdus and Edus L'Yisrael, besides the explanation already given that it is called testimony because it belongs to the hidden realm, there is another reason why it is called Eidos. This can be understood by first explaining the pasuk. Rashi brings 2 explanations of Ba'adi Odayim. One is from the word Ad, like Bitchu v'Hashem Adei Ad. The second is from Adi, meaning ornaments or adornments, like the ornaments given at Mount Chaydev, by which the Chachamim say the Jewish people receive 2 crowns, one corresponding to Nazeh and one corresponding to Nishma. The phrase Ketzemach Hasada can be understood with so the analogy of a plant growing underground. A plant only grows after the seed first loses its form and dissolves within the power of growth in the soil. The seed rots, becomes nothing, and only then does the power of growth cause it to sprout. The reason is that a new existence cannot emerge from an existing form unless the existing form first becomes nullified, returning to a state of nothingness. So too, with the Jewish people in the Galus of Mitzrayim, they were oppressed and broken to the point of complete humility, like a seed decomposing in the soil. Their hearts became broken and humbled, reaching a state of iron. From that state came the later growth for Tirbi Vatigli. This is like the pasuk Yimi Gai Gadol, as it says, the Jewish people are Chelik Hashamamai. Through this, they were drawn close to the divine. Like it says, this process also includes the refinement of the sparks for the world of Tayu, like the transfer of the birthright from Esav, who was called the greater son. Then comes Vatavai Badiadayim, referring to the receiving the Torah. About this, it says, that the Jewish people are given 2 crowns mentioned earlier. These 2 crowns represent the level of surrounding light, a spiritual influence that cannot be grasped intellectually. It is the level of Yoshes Chesed, the concealed will beyond all comprehension, the inner divine desire, known only to Hashem himself. From that array shines to this is similar to the earlier idea, through the negative commandments, the hidden level of Yudke is drawn down. Therefore, Mishkan Ha'edos can also be understood from the term Adi, meaning ornament or crown. It also means eternity, like Adiyat. These crowns represent the connection to Ein Sof, the infinite, since the infinite has no limit. The ascent in understanding godliness is endless. Every level leads to another higher level without end. Another meaning of Adi is of ad is boundary, like ad paisava. In this sense, it means that the intellect can reach up to a certain point, but not beyond. The level of Kesed, the crown, cannot be grasped at all. As there says regarding Mibara Ela, that above a certain level there is no question at all. The plural adim suggests that these crowns are without limit, rising level after level infinitely. Another interpretation connects adi adim with the union of Chachma Bina, which receive their source from the level of Kesser. This again corresponds to the union of Yudke, which is drawn down to the observance of the negative commandments. Another explanation is that these 2 crowns correspond to the 2 crowns mentioned in the Zohar, the spiritual levels that stand above ordinary intellect. Through Das, they are related and drawn into lower attributes. Das, Mishkan Edus refers to the union of Yudke, the hidden realm. This is why the word Edus applies, because it relates to something hidden. At the same time, it also hints to ornament and crowns, since from these crowns flows the spiritual testimony for the hidden. Now we can also understand the phrase Shapaka Dalpi Maisha. They refer specifically to Mishkan Edus. Earlier, the pasuk mentioned Eila Pekudei Mishkan, which refers to the union of Vavke, the ordinary Mishkan, chief the Torah study and the 248 positive commandments. But now it explains the Mishkan Edus, the union of Yudke, was Paka Dalpi Maisha. To the level represented by Maisha, this union is drawn down. Maisha represents complete humility and self-nullification, as he says. Earlier was explained that the drawing down of the level of Yudke occurs specifically to Bittul. This is why Rabbi Akiva would bow and prostrate him so deeply in prayer. People would place him in one corner and later find him in another. Such level cannot be reached through intellect and emotional understanding. It comes only through total self-nullification, symbolized by bowing in the Amidah. Thus, the influence drawn through the negative commandments are connected with the same spiritual channel as the influence drawn through the silent prayer in Ezra's summary. Another meaning of Mishkan Ha'edus comes from a Tavoi Badi Adayim. The word Adayim refers to both crowns and to eternity. These crowns represent the hidden divine level drawn through the negative commandments. This is why Mishkan Ha'edus is connected with Moshe, who embodies the quality of self-nullification through which this hidden union is revealed. Zayin, based on all this, we can understand somewhat the idea of Pesach and the eating of matzah. Pasuk which refers to the level of Mishkan Ha'edus mentioned earlier, was said about the exodus from Mitzrayim. This means that on the first night of Pesach, the Jewish people merited a revelation of those supernal unifications mentioned above. Even the unification of Yudke, which comes from the level of Yoshesh Chesed, was revealed to them. Then, as the sages say, since that revelation, from that revelation there flows Eidus Yisrael. Therefore, the pasuk says, according to all the explanation mentioned earlier, that the entire revelation was present on the night of Pesach. Because this, they were commanded to eat matzahs. It says matzahs yechal es Shabbos hayam. At first glance, the wording is difficult. It should have said B'Shabbos hayam, but as Shabbos hayam implies that a matzah feeds or affects the 7 days themselves, which seems strange. However, the meaning becomes clear. The 7 days correspond to the 7 midas, chasek gvura, etc. These come from the letters Vavke of the divine name. The Vav corresponds to the 6 midas mentioned in the pasuk al Chashem Gdula V'Gvura, And the seventh is the Hashem, as in L'cha Hashem HaMamlacha. These midas also exist in the human soul. They include love that arises through intellectual contemplation of the greatness of the Creator. When a person understands that He is your life, that He renews creation every day, and through such contemplation, love or awe is born. This corresponds to the earlier idea of Mi Bara'ela. But higher than this is love and attachment that comes from contemplating the essence of the infinite light. From that perspective, the entire existence of worlds is considered nothing, because in all totality the world comes only through a single divine thought. This higher love is called Adiyot. It corresponds to the two crowns mentioned earlier. These come from the midas that are above intellect and are then revealed within the midas that are below intellect. This is the drawing of Yud K into Vav K. In order for the Yid to merit this revelation on Pesach, something was required. At the time of the Exodus, they were still in a state of cottoness, like a plant at the beginning of its growth. They possessed only a small love, not the great love of Adiyot. Therefore, they were commanded to eat matzah. The idea of matzah is the drawing down at the level of ma, which represents self-nullification. One can see this physically. Matzah has no rising or swelling like chametz. It expresses humility and submission. So this bittul level of Yud K is drawn down, as explained earlier regarding Mishkan HaEdus, where the revelation comes specifically through humility. This explains the pasuk Matzah is yechal Yom. The word yechal here is in a causative sense. The matzah causes the 7 days to be nourished. In other words, the level of ma contained in a matzah is drawn into the 7 midas, filling them with humility and nullification. Then the Jewish people become able to receive the revelation of the higher unification of Yud K, which is the level of Eidus L'Yisrael and Adiyot. Eating matzah is also preparation for receiving the Torah. And Shavuos, after the giving of the Torah, it says, at that time they were again received 2 crowns, which is the same idea of Adiyadayim, the revelation of the supernal will beyond comprehension. Therefore, the preparation had to be matzah, which represents humility. Even though on the first night of Pesach, the level of Adiyadayim was revealed, that revelation comes automatically from above, as it is not through human effort. This is why the holiday is called Pesach, meaning a leap, as in Migdalig al Heharim. After that night, the revelation withdraws. Then begins the mitzvah of counting the Eimer for 7 weeks in order to draw these revelations again, but this time through human effort. The work of the Eimer is the transformation of the 7 midas of the animal soul, each of which contains 7 aspects until all are directed to Hashem. This corresponds to the level of Vavke. Then on the 50th day, the higher level of Adiyadayim is revealed automatically. This is why the pasuk says, in practice we count only 49, but through the counting the 49 days, the 50th gate is revealed on its own. That 50th level belongs to Yud K, which has no vessel and therefore cannot be reached through direct action. Thus, the counting prepares the vessel through transforming the midas, and then revelation comes on its own, like the and Tacharish. And this is the essential meaning of Adiyadayim, the revelation of the crown. So the conclusion is, on the night of Pesach, a revelation of both Vav K and Yud K shines upon the Jewish people from above through the eating of the matzah. Then the revelation withdraws through the counting of the Eimer. The Jewish people draw down through their own work. And on Shavuos, they give a third level of Adiyadayim, the crowns is revealed again. Kitzer, the summary of the eating of matzah expresses humility and self-nullification. Through this, he didn't become like a state of nothingness in which growth can occur. From that humility comes particularly, and finally the revelation of Adiyadayim, culminating in the giving of the Torah. Yes, and in the Seder Tefillah we find this whole in as well, in the meaning of Pekudei Summary. It is known that the first pasuk of Krishma Shema Yisrael Shem Elokeinu Chulu is the level of Yichudei Allah, the level of Yud K mentioned above, the one called an Astaris L'Shem Elokeinu. This is the meaning of Mishkan Ha'edus Yisher Pakad Al Pi Moshe. Then in the pasuk V'Havta B'Chal Chulu, the Indian is the love that comes from Seichel and Tam, and that is the level of Yichudei Tatal, like Eila Pekudei Mishkan as explained above in Sumar Chulu Rima Bar Eila. But before Krishma, the whole point of Pekudei is that a person can reach in the first pasuk of Shema the higher yichud of Hashem Elokeinu called Nestarish. Without the song and praise of Pekudei, it is impossible to come to that level of unity. This was David's Levim song and melody. They were the ones who carried the Mishkan, as it says, B'nei Gershon b'Mrari Nesei Mishkan and B'nei Kahas Nesei HaMikdash and U'chanus HaMishkan Yikim Oisai Halvim. The reason why specifically through Pekudei through song and melody when it reaches this higher yichud can be understood by first explaining the meaning of Shir Halavim. It says V'chayis Elotzev V'shev Kimari Habazak. Rashi explains, like a flame shooting out from a furnace and quickly going back in. So to the chayis move and Elotzev V'shev, the same is true of the Nefesh Lekitz in a person, which is called Ner Shemnesh Prasadim. It has to move constantly in Elotzev V'shev, rising and returning without interruption. These are the two kinds of espilos, one after the other all the time. V'chayis Elotzev V'shev means that after Elotzev comes Shev, and after Shev comes Elotzev again and again. Through this, the Nefesh Lekitz rises from level to level until the very highest levels. That is the Indian of the Shir Levim over the carbon. That is why they were the ones who carried the Mishkan. Through this song of Elotzev V'shev, they lift and elevate the Mishkan until they become even higher. There becomes even the higher unity of Mishkan. This is like the Yerushalayim Abnei Kirsh Chobelah, joining Yerushalayim Shalamata, which is the unity of Vav K, to Yerushalayim Shalamayla, which is level of Yud-K, so they become one. So too, Pekudei Summary before Krishma is the preparation to raise the soul into looking in the higher unity of the first pasuk of Krishma. When one says Hashem Elokeinu, that means connecting the revelation of the neshama as a clothed in the body with its source and root above. It's Mazle. This is Shisham or Shvat and Shiftei Ka. The Shvatim of Bria are connected with their source, and the is called Shiftei Ka. That happens. Shisham Alu Hashlam Shechobra in Yishlam of Shechobra, which is joining the Mishkan. Joining of Mishkan with Mishkan Edus, joined together, Mamish. This is the Indian of Lavim because Li comes from Levia, connection and attachment. It says Va'avad Levihu, meaning the hidden world Amadas Kasya. The Lavim is to connect and join Amadas Kasya with Amadas Galia. This is the meaning of Asher Pekudei Moshe Avadas Lavim. Simple meaning of the pasuk is that by command of Moshe there was appointed both Avadas Lavim and the whole the Mishkan. The phrase the Shabbat goes both on what comes before and what comes after on Mishkan Edus and on Avadas Lavim and carrying the Mishkan. Then Pekudei Summary is a third Indian that this whole avodah was in the hand of Isamar. The explanation of Pekudei Moshe, including the verse Lavim in carrying the Mishkan, letters of Pekudei are the same as Dafak. In Dafak, in the Civic Kabbalah, Dafak is rooted in Acharayim Chachma, and this is what is hinted in Pekudei Defik. The Indian of Ratzah B'Shev comes in the level of Dafak. We see this physically. In a pulse, there is a movement upward and downward, contraction, expansion, the withdrawal of life and its return. This is felt in the beating of the heart, in the breathing, and even in the pulse in the hand. So to above, Ratzah B'Shev Kamaria Bazak, the Veda Levim and carrying the Mishkan has its root in the supernal Dafak in this movement of contraction and expansion. That is Pekudei Moshe from the Cherayim de Ma de Moshe, whose letters reverse into Dafak, but Mishkan Edus itself is Pekudei Moshe from the Pim. Specifically in Chachma, there is this movement of expansion and withdrawal, and it comes into expression in the Dafak. But in Bina, there's expansion, not withdrawal. That is like the blood spreading through the Shisagidim, by which says Ki Hadamu Anavers to Chachma that comes into the blood and the veins of the movement of the Dafak. This is the higher unity of Yud-Ke through the license that we're Lav Kedem Lahain. This is called a Defik, the union of Chachma Bina Train Rain. So Shirpakad Api Maisha Avadas Lavim means that from there comes the power for the Levium to elevate the Mishkan up to Mishkan Ha'edus, to connect and join them together like a Shechubala. Then it says, the point is that a person should not remain only in the state of Ratzah B'Shev, because that is not the final purpose. The purpose is to draw this into a Keli, and this is the bittul of Ratzah B'Shev should dwell, this bittul of Ratzah B'Shev should dwell in a Keli. The Keli for the light of Ratzah B'Shev is specifically speech and Divrei Teres. It says in Krishma, after V'yahavta, which is the Ratzah B'Shev, V'dibarta Bam. Vidibarta means draw the Ratzah B'Shev into a vessel, and that vessel is the letters of Torah. But specifically, when there is a bittul in that dibar, when the person is only a keli for Devar Hashem, for the halacha being spoken through him, then the dibar becomes a vessel for Ratzah B'Shev. This is Lapi Moshe, because Moshe was completely in bittul ad she'amar v'nasati esav, meaning he was not a separate existence at all. Rather, shechinim the best and so in every person there is a need of Moshe through Krishma, through Mesiras Nefesh Be'achad, through real bittul. Afterwards, Tan l'sheni v'secher, your word mamish. This is Pekudei Summary. Summary is like the word used in Gemara, itmar, meaning it was said almost by itself. It is like Oznei Dibru Yirei Hashem, where the wording means that not they themselves spoke from themselves, but that speech happened through them. So to Summary means that it is said in its own because the person's speech is in total bittul, and the Devar Hashem, the halacha, is spoken through him. This is like what the Maggid said to the Beis Yosef, Ani Amishtam the best b'ficha, or like Shechinim the best b'takinish Moshe. This is the meaning of the Bar Tabam after V'yahavta, make a vessel in bittul so that Vasan Dor b'ficha. So there is here a joining of Mishkan with Mishkan Edus becoming Ki'ir Shechubala, both from upper below and from above downward through Avadas Levim through Ratzah B'Shev. There is an ascent from below upward, that is V'chaneis HaMishkan Yakimu Oisai HaLevim, lifting it upward. Then through a Sekateda, through Pekudei Summary, there is the joining of Yud-Ke with Vav-Ke from above downward. This is like the Yesh Merabah Shem Yud-Ke that should become great and drawn into Vav-Ke and not remain concealed as in case Yud-Ke. Now all this is Lapi Moshe, and so it's regarding my mitzvahs. They're also kelim, though they are divided in many different forms. Still, their whole point is that they should become a keli for the higher kedusha should dwell in them. As it says, there is in this both ascent and drawing down, and the mitzvah is the keli for it. As it says, kiner mitzvah, there must be simcha shal mitzvah, because through that there is drawn the revelation of Amadas Kasya, the level of Yudkes, and simcha is in Bina, which is called Mishkan Edus. So the whole order of tefillah, Pekudei Kishma, V'hafta Dibarta, follows the same order as this. Pasuk El Pekudei Pekudei Summary Aaron HaKohen. And Aaron HaKohen is known to be Avarabba Kanarabba, who draws down the power for this whole seven of Aveda, and all the service of Levim was through Aaron. As it says, Aaron Avan Yavai B'Samoy Sam Ish Alabidase, and Vayilvu Elacha V'Yishar Sucha, because the whole point of the elevation through the Levim is the drawing down through Adin Zakan Adin, which is the halachas hatira. All this is for now, but also lavai when it says that vavke, which is now Yerushalayim Shlamata, will itself be on the level of Yudke, the level of Mishkan Hoedis. What now can only be grasped by way of negation, not directly, will then be drawn into actual revelation. This is the meaning of Dir B'Taktainim, specifically Vavke. Therefore, it says Vahaya B'Mahu. Vahaya means that the Vavke comes before Yudke, because then there will be a full dwelling below. Kitzer in the daily say that Tefillah we find this whole Inyam Sukkot December like Tavez Telavim, and throughout when it reaches in Shema Yisrael, the level of Pekudei Allah. This is Pakad Al Pi Moshe, and from above downward, this is the level of Itmar, like Az Nidru Yiri Hashem. Aimer based. Hine Pekudei Mishkan refers to the union of Vavke of the name Havaya, meaning the union of Zeirampin and Nukva. The word Pekudei is from the expression Lifke Desishtei, meaning marital union, and the Mishkan refers to the divine presence, Shechina Suzi's Baruch, which is the attribute of Malchus as is known. This union comes about through Torah and mitzvahs. That is why the pasuk says that Eila Pekudei. The Shisha said the Mishnah, each of which includes 6 aspects, together equals the numerical value of Eila. From this comes the level of Pekudei and Mishkan, the union of Zeirampin and Nukva. However, Mishkan Hoedus refers to the union of Yudke. It says Shiftei Ka Edus Yisrael. The word Edus applies specifically to something that is hidden and concealed. This refers to Abavim, which are called Nishtaris. This union is Pakad Al Pi Moshe, meaning it comes to the level of Moshe, which is Bittel, as in V'nach Numah, the name Moshe itself, into the connection and union of Abavim, because Moshe has the numerical value of 345, which corresponds to Kofad, Kof Pedalid, and Kof Samachalef. The union of Shem of Abba with the name of Eke of Ima, as will be explained later. In addition, Moshe married the level of Bina. These 2 unifications appear in the daily order of davening, specifically in Krishma. The first pasuk, Krishma, Shema Yisrael, represents the union of Abba Ima. This is the level of Mishkan Hoedus Shepakad Al Pi Moshe, which comes through the quality of Ma, self-nullification. A person must give over a soul in a chad, and through that bittul, the above union of Mishkan Hoedus is drawn down. Then in the pasuk V'Havta Savaya, we have the union. The matter is the union of Zeirampin and Nukva. The word Es refers to Malchus, and Es means something secondary or subordinate to the name Havaya. It can also mean Ace, time, which is rooted with an ayin, which is rooted in Malchus as the source of time. So V'Yahavta S means that through love a person arouses a higher love toward the level of S, an Aleph, meaning that Hashem Avay L'Kacha should become united. The union of Zeirampin and Nukva, this corresponds to Eila Pekudei Mishkan. Therefore, in the first pasuk of Krishma, Moshe says in Mishnah Torah Havaya L'Keinu, because it is the union of Abba Ima, and that union comes through Moshe. But in the pasuk V'Yahavta, it says Havaya Elikacha, because that refers to the union of Zeirampin and Nukva, as explained elsewhere. This is what the Zohar explains regarding the large Ayin Shema and the large Dal and Chad, which together form the word Ad. This which corresponds to the idea of Mishkan Ha'edos, as will be explained later, as also noted by the Balaturim in the pasuk of Aschana, that the enlarged letters hint to the phrase Ad Hayavaya Bochem, Edavaya Bochem, and similarly to the pasuk Ve'atim Edai, as mentioned as well in the Zohar in Kedeshim. Base. To understand more clearly why the union of Abba Ve'ima is called Mishkan Hoedus, we first need to recall what is explained in Likoty in their introduction to Tamiyah Mitzvahs. Through the fulfillment of the negative commandments, the union of Abba Ve'ima is brought about. This is the meaning of Shmi Yudke Shasa. Through the positive commandments, however, there is a union of Zeirampin and Nukva, as in Vavke Mzichri Ramach. We must understand why the fulfillment of the negative commandments is specifically connected to the union of Abba Ve'ima. The explanation is that the union of Abba Ve'ima is the level of nullification of existence, where the sense of independent existence becomes completely nullified in the light of the Ein Sof, to the point that it no longer has any significance at all. This is like what it says, V'nach Numah, complete self-nullification. This is called the union of Abba Ve'ima because Chachma is the level of Ayin, as it says, V'chacham Ayin Matzeh. The word Chachma also means Kayachma, the power of what, meaning a state of self-effacement. Bina, on the other hand, is the level of Yesh. It says the Hanchalai of Yesh. This refers to Gan Eden, whose root is in Bina, as it says, V'nar Yoytemi Eden. There the Ein Sof becomes revealed in a way that souls can perceive and enjoy the radiance of the Shechina. Thus, the union of Abba Ve'ima, which are Chachma and Bina, is the union of Ayin and Yesh, where the Yesh becomes nullified to the Ayin, allowing the revelation of the level of ayin within the yesh. This union is drawn down during Krishma, so that this flow from ayin to yesh is revealed. The reason chachma represents chachma and nullification is that chachma stands above bina, which is understanding and intellectual comprehension. In chachma, there is a revelation of Ein Sof that cannot be grasped by thought at all. Because of that, the effect of this revelation is the nullification of understanding and the nullification of the soul sense of existence within the light of the Ein Sof. As explained in Tana, the source of intellect lies in chachma, which is beyond what can be grasped, and therefore the Ein Sof can be clothed there. Bina, however, is understanding and comprehension. Therefore, the divine light revealed there is only the radiance of the Shekhinah, not the essence. From Bina, which is comprehension, it is possible for emotional reactions such as love to arise, but such contemplation and emotional response still exist in the realm of Yesh. You felt experience reality because there is a perceiving subject and an emotional response. That is why the pasuk says Lahanchal Oyav Yesh, since love belongs to the realm of Yesh. But the level of Chachma, which is beyond comprehension, is different. There, the revelation comes from the Ein Sof, hidden beyond all hiddenness, beyond all grasp. Because the revelation there is not within comprehension, the emotional response it produces is not ordinary love, but self-nullification, where one loses the sense of independent existence. As Moshe said, "V'nachnu ma." This is the level described in Tanya, where the word of Atzilus, whose general quality is Chachma, stands above Gan Eden. It is the realm of greatest tzaddikim, whose service is not based on emotional love, but on complete nullification, like the Avos, about whom it says, Hein Hein Amarkava. The union of Abba V'Ima therefore means that the light of Ein Sof is clothed within Meichen da Abba, which are beyond comprehension, becomes drawn down and revealed in Bina. Yet this revelation in Bina is not an actual grasp of the essence, because in truth, Leis Machshavas Fisabeh. To understand how something can be revealed yet not grasped in essence, one can use an analogy from the explanation of the Rambam about the attributes applied to Hashem. The Rambam explains that such attributes are not positive descriptions, but rather negative description. A positive attribute describes the essence of something, what it is. A negative attribute, however, does not describe the essence of it at all. It only tells us what the thing is not. Since the Creator is completely beyond comprehension, it is impossible to describe him with attributes like power, wisdom, or will in a literal sense. His essence is far beyond the nature of these qualities as we understand them. Therefore, these descriptions are only negations. When we say God is powerful, we mean he is not lacking power. When we say he is wise, we mean that he is not lacking wisdom. Thus, such descriptions do not reveal the divine essence; they only remove mistaken ideas that contradict it. Still, this process of negation does reveal something. It reveals that the divine is beyond all limitations. Moreover, even within this type of knowledge, there are countless levels. Through many layers of negation, one can approach an understanding of a matter, even though the essence itself remains beyond comprehension. The same applies in the spiritual realm. The revelation drawn from Chachma, where the Ein Sof is clothed beyond the chain of worlds, becomes revealed within Bina, but the comprehension there does not grasp the essence. It is only like the understanding achieved through negation. This is because the Ein Sof cannot be grasped at all. The level of Keser is therefore called Yoshesh Chayshech Sitrei, since it conceals the infinite light so that it remains hidden. Through Keser, however, the infinite light becomes clothed within Chachma, which is also above ordinary intellect. This is the level of Meichen da Abba, where the infinite light beyond the chain of worlds is present. Bina, however, comprehends only the radiance of the divine light that descends to the chain of worlds. That light can be revealed in comprehension within Atzilus and even in Gan Eden. But the infinite light that exists in Keser cannot be grasped directly within Bina. Even so, through the union of Chachma and Bina, some form of revelation occurs, yet that revelation takes the form of the nullification of comprehension, not comprehension itself. The closest analogy in our experience is the knowledge that comes to negation. One gains a certain kind of understanding and awareness, but still does not grasp the essence itself. Because of this, the emotional response that arises from such a revelation is self-nullification. A person removes anything that opposes the divine presence, the sense of independent existence that conceals the infinite light. Every emotional response resembles the nature of its source. Since the source here is the nullification of comprehension, the response that comes from it is also nullification, the state expressed by V'nachnu ma. Gimel. This explains why Likuti says that through fulfilling the negative commandments, there is a union of Abba V'Ima. All the loises and mitzvahs are essentially forms of negation, removing something that opposes or conceals godliness. For example, loisech al chelev, shatnas l'yala alecha. These are not actions performed actively; they're acts of refraining from things that block the soul's nullification to the Ein Sof. These forbidden things represent independent existence, something separate and opposite to the level of ayin. Because they assert separatedness, they damage the soul's capacity for bittul, the nullification that comes from chachma, where everything is seen as kalachash before him. Some negative commandments carry the penalty of karas, meaning the soul cut off from its source, losing the connection to the level of nullification. This can be seen especially clearly in the example of chametz on Pesach. Matzah represents humility and self-nullification. As it says in the Haggadah, chametz, on the other hand, represents self-inflation and ego, the sense of independent existence. So the purpose of every leis is to remove something that conceals the infinite light. When the concealment is removed, the higher union of Abba V'Ima can be revealed. This revelation is also a manifestation of the infinite light, but it cannot be grasped directly. Instead, it is known, as the Maimon described earlier, a little like knowledge through negation. Through this kind of awareness, a person comes closer to the divine reality, even though the essence itself remains beyond comprehension. In fact, this awareness is far greater than the comprehension of the divine radiance that shines through the chain of worlds. This is the meaning of the pasuk, Beres Loiseru. The sages interpret Loi here is referring to the Loises commandments. They are actually higher than the positive commandments because Lav Kaidam Lahin. First there is darkness, and only afterward comes light. As it says, the light of Kesser cannot descend into a vessel through the normal structure of lights and vessels because it is beyond the chain of worlds and beyond comprehension. Therefore, it can only be revealed in the form of a negation through the removal of opposition. This is why it is said, the essence remains concealed. This revelation comes specifically to the negative commandments because the sparks that fell during the shattering of the vessels descended into the three impure klippas which conceal the light of Kesser. When these opposing forces are removed, the light of Kesser becomes revealed within Chachma and Bina. By contrast, the 248 positive commandments correspond to the letters Vavka, the union of Zeir and Nuf, which involves the divine light that becomes clothed in vessels. This is similar to direct comprehension, not merely negation. In that sense, the positive commandments have an advantage. They involve a revealed grasp of the divine light, but in truth, the negative commandments are higher because the revelation they draw down comes from a much deeper source, the root of the light itself, whereas the light drawn through positive commandments is only like a radiance compared to that source. This is similar to the statement that a sage is similar. A sage is greater than a prophet. The prophet perceives the essence of the prophetic vision, while the sage perceives only the existence of the concept. Yet the sage reaches a higher level when it cannot be revealed through prophecy. From this, we can also understand the great importance of rabbinic enactments, which serve as fences and safeguards, similar in nature to the negative commandments. Even the 7 rabbinic mitzvahs, though they involve action, are fundamentally intended to distance a person from wrongdoing, like Tiyos Yadayim, which protects holiness. This is also the meaning of the statement that extra understanding was given, referring to the oral Torah. What in the written Torah can only be expressed in the form of negation, was it can be expressed in the oral Torah through concrete action and comprehension. This does not contradict what is explained elsewhere, that through the negative commandments, the source of the light itself will one day be revealed. That will happen in the future, when the light of Kesser itself will become revealed, which is connected with the resurrection of the dead. But now, even in the highest world, revelation of the divine essence cannot occur directly. It can only be approached in the way described above through the kind of awareness represented by negation. This is why even the Abbas, whose places in the world of Atzilus higher than Gan Eden, will still rise again in physical bodies at the resurrection. At that time, a much higher revelation will occur in the physical world itself. This is why the 248 positive commandments are called the 248 limbs of the king. The divine life flows into vessels just as the soul's life flows into the limbs of the body. This also explains the statement, when the Sitra is subdued, the glory of the Holy One becomes complete. The Skafi refers to the observance of the negative commandments and all the rabbinic safeguards that distance a person from evil. Through this, the divine glory is revealed, reaching the level of the union of Ab Ima, even drawing down the level of Kesser into Zeir Anpin, as is revealed, especially on Shavuos. This is the meaning of Ashtali Mikar. The glory becomes complete, and this is also the idea of the dwelling place of God in the lower worlds. Within the union of Zeir Anpin and Nukva, which comes to Torah and positive commandments, there are also 2 levels. Torah corresponds to the inner limbs. Saying to Rasim Chachma Nafkas, Torah emerges from Chachma, drawing down the level of the intellectual faculties. The mitzvahs, however, correspond to the outer limbs. This is the meaning of the pasuk, Eile Pekudei Mishkan Ha'edos. Pekudei HaMishkan refers to the union of Zeir Anpin and Nukva, which is drawn down through Torah mitzvahs. The word Eila has the numerical value of 36, because 6 attributes of Zeir Anpin each include 6 others. Also, Eila forms the letters of Leah, who gave birth to the 6 sons, corresponding to those 6 attributes. This connects with the pasuk Mi bara Eila. The word Mi refers to Bina, which has 50 gates. The numerical value of Mi. From Bina comes the birth of these attributes to Eila. Through this process, the union called Pekudei Mishkan occurs. Zeir Anpin draws influence of the Malchus from there into the lower worlds. This is accomplished through Torah study, which also corresponds to the 6 orders of the Mishnah, each containing 6 aspects, again matching the number Eila, and through the performance of the positive commandments, which corresponds to the 248 limbs of Zeir Anpin. But Mishkan Edus refers to the union of Abba V'Ima. Since Bina is called Shchintei Law, this union comes to the negative commandments. It's called Edus because testimony refers to something hidden. A witness does not reveal the essence of a matter, but only provides evidence that something exists. Likewise, the awareness drawn through the negative commandments is not a direct grasp of divine essence, but a form of testimony to a hidden level called Tzim L'chol Tzibin. By contrast to the positive commandments, the divine light is revealed within the vessels like a direct experience. But the revelation drawn through negative commandments comes from a much higher level, the essence itself, and therefore cannot be grasped directly. It can only appear as edus, a kind of indication rather than a full revelation. This is similar to the analogy discussed earlier about knowledge through negation. This is also another explanation of edus based on the pasuk Shisham L'Shvat M'Shifteka Edus L'Yisrael L'Hidus L'Shem Hashem. Daled. To understand this better, we first need to understand the pasuk in Yechezkel Devav Ketemach Chasad Nisaticha V'Sirbi V'Sigdli V'Tavai Ba'ali Odai. Pekudei means adornment, and this refers to the train itrin that Zah inherits, as mentioned in the Rabbah, which are the two ponim tatoin, lower faces of Netzach v'Hoid, the Arachanpin. The point is like this: a plant does not grow unless the seed first rots, become a kind of ayin, and only then does it grow and become a new yesh. As long as the seed remains in its original state of yesh, it cannot produce a new growth, especially not one greater and better than it was before. So too above, as explained in Eitz Chaim regarding the union of Zun, they cannot return to being panim b'panim unless the first configuration of the Malchus is first concealed, so that at first she becomes only a single point beneath the side. In the beginning there are acher ba'acher. In order to return to that state into panim b'panim, there first has to be a nullification of the earlier state, so that she becomes only a point beneath the side. Only then can she later expand into a higher state of panim b'panim. So that is the meaning of it. Just as grain cannot grow from one state of yesh to another without first passing through a state of ayin, so to Knesset Yisrael, for Knesset Yisrael to rise to a higher level, there must first be a state of bittul and nothingness, becoming like a nekuda tachas yisod. Then afterward comes the tirbi b'tigli b'tzavay b'diyadayim, meaning the revelation of the train itrin, which are drawn into Zah, and from Zah to Nukfan, they come from Arachap itself, from its very essence, and not merely from a radiance. Now, in the word adi, there are three meanings. One is the simple meaning, adornment, like as adi mahar chaydiv. The second is the meaning of eternity, like adiyad. The third is the meaning of limit, like ad poisavin. Here and no further. All three meanings really come together in the level of keser. The first meaning, adornment, is obvious. The crown itself is an adornment on the head. Like tzaddikim yeshimat the same a crown is made from precious stones, which in themselves are from the level of daimim. But after being refined until they shine and sparkle, they become fit to make a crown for a king. So too, Sandal ties crowns for his master from the praise of the Yidden. The letters of prayer are also called stones, and when they are refined through Mesiras Nefesh Be'echad, they become like a crown. The same is true of the mitzvahs which descend into physical action, parchment of tefillin, the wool of tzitzis, and the like, all things at the level of daimon, because not classing b'seifin, specifically through this low physicality, the light of what is above all ishtalshlus is drawn down, namely keser. This is why the Chacham say that Las Lave Tzaddikim will sit with the crowns on their head. In Gan Eden, the revelation is only from the level of Na'yatzim Eden, meaning Chachma Bina, and therefore the revelation is only for the soul. But in the future, in Tchias HaMesem, the revelation will be even into the body, as in Vatzma Yisayach Yachal. This can only happen through the revelation of light, of a layer higher than the Shtashlos, namely the letter Kesh. That is why only then there will be about the same bit of shame. This is the meaning of Badiyadayim, which are also called today in Itrin. The second meaning, eternity, belongs to Keser, because Keser is a mitzvah between Asma and Sof and the emanated worlds, and it contains something of the lowest level of Ein Sof itself, since it has in it a touch of Ein Sof that carries the meaning of Ad, eternity, and listeners. This is the meaning of Meshubach Mufayad Shmai Gadol. Shmai Gadol refers to Keser because Malchus is simply called simply Shem, or Keser, which is drawn from Malchus the Ein Sof, is called Shemai Hagadol, and therefore it is Adiyad in the sense of actual infinity. The third meaning of Ad as a limit, Ad Pesavai, also belongs specifically to Keser because there is never any real grasp or comprehension of the light of Keser. That is why Chachma is called the Deishis, the beginning of revelation, and it's called the Hi'er. But Keser is Yashish Chayshech Sisrei, where there is no comprehension at all, since it is called Ad, meaning up to here and no further. It's how the aspect of Keser, that is still the lower part of the Matzah, there is definitely no grasp here at all, since that aspect is called Atik, separated and distinct from the emanated realms, and also called Reshid Leis Yada. But it's how the aspect of Keser, that is the root of the emanated realms, one could say Ad Vad B'chlal, since this aspect is included among the spheres. That may be why it says Badia Daim in the plural, because from every aspect of this Ad, something was drawn into them. This is also the meaning of Yishtabach Shimcha Lo Ad Malkin. The Shimcha meaning Malchus Datil should be elevated into the level of Malchus Ein Sof, which is called Ad in all three senses above. This is why it is called Mishkan Hoidus. This Mishkan, which is the union of Avah, has drawn into it from Keser, which is the level of Adei Adim in the three meanings. This is also the meaning of Shesham Ol Shvatim Shiftei Yudkei Edus Yisrael. The 12 tribes have their root in the Midas of Atzilus. In the 12 diagonal boundaries of Zah, the Beis Guli Alachsen, but the root is really in Arach Ampesh. The root of the Midas of Atzilus is in the Midas of Keser, called Turei Chashecha. So Shesham Ol Shvatim means that through the Halos Man they rise to their source in Keser, and through this there is drawn Edusli. So meaning the drawing down of these chain Itrin into Zah. This is why it says Lahidus Shemavaya, since the level of Keser. In the level of Keser there is no actual comprehension or grasp, but what is possible there is only Haidah. Haidah is a form of bittul, and that is the right response to something about comprehension. This is also why the sages say that when said the one who does not bow during Maiden will not rise in Tchias Mason, because Tchias Mason comes through the revelation of the light of Keser, as explained above regarding what the same Hashem, and the last man to this level is through Haidah and Bittul. Hey, I should pocket. Let me make sure this corresponds to what is explained in Pekudei Summary, that the union of Abba Imer occurs in the first pasuk of Krishma, specifically in the words of Shem Elokeinu. From the pasuk we have to onward begins the rectification of the Galgalta of Zah, where the crown of Chesed spreads until the level of Chesed of Zah, and all the parts of Zah become unified within it. But in the first pasuk, where the union is Abba V'Ima, the light of love is not yet felt. This is because the union there is in the mode of the bittul of Chachma, where the bittul of Ein Mulvade Mamish is revealed. There is no dependent being who loves at all. Only afterward, when the light ascends into Zah, does the quality of love become relevant. That is the meaning of the pasuk V'Yahavta. So the union of Abba V'Ima in the first pasuk, which corresponds to Mishkan Aedis, is established specifically through Meisha, because Meisha represents level of Ma, complete nullification. In contrast, the pasuk V'Yahavta parallels Eila Pekudei Mishkan. Eila refers to the 6 attributes of Zah, beginning with love, and this is the union of Zah and Nakfa. Based on this, we can understand the large Ayin and Dal in the first pasuk of Krishma, which spell aid, meaning witness. This corresponds to the phrase Eid Avayabachem, referring to the level of Mishkan Aedis. The union of this verse, the union of Abba Ima, draws revelation from the level of Keser. This is why the word aid carries the meanings explained earlier: adornment, eternity, and limit, and also testimony about something hidden. The idea is as follows: in the level called the Malak Alam, the pasuk says, "Godliness can be perceived through the created world." But in the level of Sevik Alam, the pasuk says, "Aminu," meaning faith beyond comprehension. That is why it is called Nistaris, the hidden dimension. Since Malak Alam is the level called Amad is Galia, the revealed world, the term Aedis applies specifically to Sevik Alam, which is beyond revelation. Since still, Aedis also relates to Das, because even though this level is beyond comprehension, nevertheless becomes drawn down into awareness. This is the meaning of Yadaita here, and therefore it says Atam Edai, and also Vayakam Aedis Bianca, through the souls of the Yidden, through the service of Torah mitzvahs, the level of Sevik Kalam becomes drawn down into Das. Elsewhere it is explained that the idea of Likutei exists on every level, and it refers to the union of Zah and Nukva. On a higher level, the Kav that extends from the infinite light is called Shechina, since it comes from Malchut and Sof, while the essence of the Matzal is called pekudei. That is why Arizal writes that Shmei refers to the level of Malchus, while earlier Kabbalistic writings say that Shmei has the numerical value of Ratzon. Both are true. The level of Malchus Ein Sof is also called Shmei, specifically Shmei HaGadol, and from that level, the Ratzon, the Keser of Atzilus, is drawn. This is the meaning of Yishta V'Yismechu B'Cha Yisrael Mekat Shmecha. The souls of the Yidden draw down the union of pekudei, meaning they bring the holiness of the divine essence and the Shimcha, the divine name. This is true both of the union of Zah and Nukva and Atzilus, and even in the higher sense, where light is drawn from the divine essence into the Kav. Therefore, the concept of Mishkan Aedis is even clearer, although it refers to the union of Abba. There is within it also a revelation of Keser. As explained elsewhere, the union itself is rooted in Keser, which is drawn from Malchus Ein Sof, the level called Shmei. The union means drawing down additional light from the Infinite One. This is also explained in Pekudei Chaim regarding the intentions of Krishma and in the Torah Parsha Vayera. The union of Krishma is the union of Abba Ima, and Abba Ima received from Keser, and Keser from Atik up to the Infinite itself, renewing receiving from the 2 crowns from their highest source. This is the meaning of the large Ayin and Dal in the first pasuk of Krishma, forming the word Aid is mentioned earlier. At first glance, there seems to be a contradiction between the 2 meanings of aid. On one hand, aid means testimony, which implies only a reflection rather than the essence itself. As explained in the Torah on Tilim, testimony is not the essence, but only an indication of it. On the other hand, Atara, crown, implies something connected to the very essence, but both meanings are true here. Above, the level of Keser itself is drawn down from the infinite into Atik, from Atik into Arach, and so on. When this light reaches Zah Nukva, it appears only as a radiance, not as the essence itself. For example, the inheritance of Abba V'Ima that reaches Zah is only a single ray of their light. Similarly, as explained earlier regarding the union of Chachma Bin, the experience is like knowledge through negation or revelation, but only a reflection of the essence. The true essence itself cannot yet be revealed, even in Atzilus. That full revelation will occur only in the future, when the pasuk V'Ezruchu Tov Avim Min Haaretz is fulfilled. Then it will be said, Hashemayim Chadashim V'Eretz Chadash Asher Ne'esa, when the essential light will become revealed completely. Vav. The phrase Asher Pakad can be understood to the letters of the word Pakad, which corresponds to Dafak, the spiritual root of the pulse. In Kabbalah, this is associated with Acharayim of the name Havaya when it's spelled with Yud, meaning the back aspect of the name Ab that belongs to Chachma, whose numerical value is Kof Pedal, as explained in Tamei Mitzvahs Parshas Vayera. The pulse shines from the level of Abba, and within it there is also a glimmer of the infinite light, because the infinite light rests within Chachma. The pulse constantly beats. This is also why the vowel points are associated with Chachma. The pulse is described with different rhythms like Kamatz, Patach, Teri, Segal, which correspond to the vowels. And the vowels originated Chachma. However, the pulse in the hand comes specifically from the back aspect of Abba. Now, the numbers Kuf Pedal and Kuf Samachalef together equal Moshe. The number Kuf Samachalef refers to the name Eka, spelled with Yudin, which represents the inner dimension of Bina. The idea is that blood is the soul, the life force that animates all limbs, and blood corresponds to Bina. In fact, the name Eka is a squared form. In a squared form, also equals Dam, as explained in its Chaim. Yeah, within this blood, there are also clothed Acharayim Abba, meaning the back aspect of Chachma comes enclosed within the inner dimension of Bina. This is also why the pulse flows through the veins of the blood. Blood also contains moisture and watery elements that correspond to Chasadim, and from these the limbs grow, like water that nourishes a tree so it can grow. This is hinted in the word Adam, which can be read Aleph Dam. In Eitz Chaim, in the discussion of skin afflictions, it explains that a nega occurs when the light of Abba withdraws. The sign of this is Behedes Levon, a white patch where the blood has left that part of the body. This shows that the light of Abba is normally clothed within the blood, again connecting to the idea of the pulse. The pulse of the heart carries the inner light, while the pulse of the hand carries the external aspect of Abba. Since Chachma and Bina are both present within the pulse, it constantly moves in a rhythm of expansion and contraction, reflecting Bittel. Chachma itself is the level of Bittel. So within the pulse, there is a union of Chachma Bina representing the numbers Kuf Pedal and Kuf Samachalef. This is the meaning of Shapakat al Moshe, and a person's service of Hashem. Pakat means that one should live with the rhythm of Ratzeh V'Shev. The Ratzeh, the movement upward, comes from the Gvura of Bina, corresponding to the heart. The Shuv, the return downward, comes from Chachma, the level of Bittel that is clothed within it. This is the pulse of the heart, whose motion reflects the rhythm of Ratzeh V'Shev. This is why it says Moshe, because Moshe represents the union of Acharayim, the Abba, and Pnimi is the Ima, corresponding to the numbers Kuf Pedal and Moshe. And Kuf Pedal and Kuf Samachalef. Moshe himself is described as Benamayim Shiziyu, again connecting to the imagery of water that nourishes a tree. Through this rhythm of bittul and movement, the person draws down the level of Mishkan Hoidus. It can also be said that Pekudei HaMishkan relates to the same concept of the pulse, to which the union of Vavke is drawn down. The idea of Pekudei comes from a very high place, as seen in the phrases like Pekudei Summary and Pekudei Pekudei, which is the sign of redemption. Even though the union of Zun takes place through Nehi, it ultimately comes from Kesed, which is why it is said Beni b'mazla talya milsa. This also corresponds to the two types of pulse: the pulse of the heart, the pulse of the hand. The pulse of the hand represents the external aspect of Abba, corresponding to Pekudei HaMishkan, the union of Zon. The hand represents the emotional attribute, Chesed and Gvura, and the pasuk hints at the union of Zon. Now, the union of Zun takes place through these two arms. The pulse of the heart, however, receives a deeper flow from the brain, opening and closing with that influence. This corresponds to the pulse Ani Yishen Neveli Bi'er Kil Dedi Daifik. That pulse represents the union of Abba Ve'ima, the union of mind and heart, as expressed in the saying Chachma Mecha Bina Liba. Now, the sages instituted it before Krishma. We first say Pekudei Zimra. This parallels what is written here. Mishkan Edis Shapakat al Pimashim Bavedis Halaviyim. The service of the Leviyim is connected to Mishkan Edis. The reason is that the union of Abba Ve'ima is extremely lofty, and Knesset Yisrael cannot reach it directly. Therefore, the sages instituted Pekudei Zimra, which prepare the soul so that it can reach the level of bittul expressed in the first pasuk of Krishma. The songs of Pekudei Zimra correspond to the service of the Leviyim who sang in the temple and also carried the Mishkan. Just as the verse says that the living creatures carry the throne, meaning that through their powerful movement and excitement they elevate the divine presence, so too the song of the Levim, which also involves the rhythm of V'Shev, lifts and elevates the Mishkan, meaning the level of Zun, and connects it to Mishkan Eidos, the level of Abba Ve'ima. In a person's spiritual service, Pekudei Zimra accomplishes something similar. Through praising God and lifting one's voice, the concealment of the animal soul is pushed aside. This is the idea of Zamer Aritzim. Then the inner heart becomes revealed, and a person can reach the state of Bittul and Mesiras Nefesh B'Achad in the first pasuk of Krishma. Oh, the order of service is this: first Pekudei Zimra, which elevate the level of Yichud Atah, corresponding to Eila Pekudei HaMishkan, connecting it to Yichud Elyon, the Mishkan Eidos, on the first pasuk of Krishma. This is the meaning of Shisham al-Shodim Shiv the Yudkei. The ascent begins from the level of the tribes, which receive from Yichud Atah, and they rise to the level of Shivtei Ka, the higher union of Abba Ve'ima, which is the Eidos that you saw, the level of Mishkan Ho'edos. After the first pasuk of Krishma comes via after, with light now flows downward from Abba Ve'ima into Zon. This is the meaning of Eidos that you saw, the testimony or revelation drawn down into Yisrael, meaning Zah in Pekudei Chaim is explained there in Krishma. The minds of Abba Ve'ima, the two crowns, are drawn down and become clothed in Zon. The phrase Biyad Yisrael Benar Nakayin then refers to speech that comes automatically, like the statement Ani HaMishkan This corresponds to Hashem, and to the pasuk with When the Torah is spoken with bittul, the word is not really one's own speech, but become the word of God in one's mouth, as in this is the vessel through which the light drawn through the unit of Abba becomes expressed. Ben Aaron hints to Aaron, who represents Abba, which corresponds to the pasuk v'yahav that precedes v'dibartem. And finally, the service of Levium is said to be Pekudei Summary because the power of the upward song and elevation must first come from above. Through Torah study with bittul, a person receives strength that later allows the soul to ascend during prayer in the rhythm of Ratzav Shev. Kitzer, the large ayin and daled in the first pasuk Kishma spell ad aid, referring to Mishkan Aidus, which is the union of Ab ve'ima in the first verse. The union of Zun corresponds to Pekudei HaMishkan expressed in the pasuk V'Yohavta. This is why Moshe says Hashem Lekenu in the first verse, while V'Yohavta it says Hashem Lekenu, Hashem Lekecha, since the first refers to a higher union of Ab ve'ima, which is Pekudei Moshe. The reason that the union of Ab ve'ima is called Mishkan Aidus can be understood by first explaining what is written in the Torah Parashat Bereshis, that through the fulfillment of the negative commandments, the union of Ab ve'ima is brought about. Bina, which is the faculty of comprehension, is called Lahanchil Oyav Hayesh, because love brings it to Bina. She is Aim Habana, the source of love and emotional experience. But Chachma is the level of Ayin, where the Ein Seif is revealed in a way that Leis Machshav Tfisabei. Therefore, Chachma is called Kayachma, a state of complete bittul, which is even higher than the level of love. To understand how the revelation from Chachma enters into Bina, one can use the idea explained by the Rambam. The descriptions we use for God are not essential attributes, but rather they are negative descriptions. We deny that he possesses limitations or deficiencies. We cannot say that these attributes describe his essence because they have no true comparison to him. This type of knowledge through negation is still a kind of revelation, yet it is not comprehension of the essence itself. This is an analogy for the revelation that occurs in the union of Chachma and Bina. From this we can understand what's written in the Torah, that the negative commandments also operate through negation, removing the things that conceal godliness. To remove these obstacles, the union of Ab ve'ima is drawn down, whose revelation is also in the manner of knowledge through negation. This is why this union corresponds to the pasuk Beretz Leizerua. By contrast, the positive commandments draw down light into vessels, something like a direct comprehension of the divine radiance. This corresponds to the union of Zon. Yet even so, the negative commandments are higher because the comprehension that comes through the positive commandments is only of the radiance, while the knowledge associated with the negative commandments relates to the source of the light, the level of Keser, where the awareness can only exist in the form described above. This resembles the idea that a sage is greater than a prophet, but even though prophecy seems to reveal the essence, it is also related to the difference between blessing and acknowledgement. Therefore, the Desire says, when the forces opposing holiness are subdued through the restraint of the negative commandments, the divine glory is elevated. This explains the phrase. The pasuk Pekudei Mishkan, it refers to the union of Zul, which comes through the Torah and positive commandments toward Eila, hence to the 6 attributes of Zah and the 6 orders of Mishnah, each containing 6 aspects, also correspond to this number. The word Pekudei relates to visitation, like Lifke Desishte, referring to the union that occurs between Zah and Malchus. But Mishkan Eidus refers to the union of Abba ve'ima because the revelation there comes directly from Ein Sof. It cannot be grasped as the essence itself. Instead, it is only known by way of Eidus testament, like a witness who testifies about something without being the thing itself. This is the analogy for knowledge through negation mentioned earlier. Yet Mishkan Eidus also relates to Adiyah the crown. The verse says, justice. The seed must first become nothing before it can grow. So to them must first be a state of bittul, becoming a point beneath the side, and only afterward can a higher state of panam be reached. Then comes B'tavai Badiyadayim, referring to the 2 crowns drawn into Zun from the level of Archap, and the word Adiyah, 3 meanings. First, the dormant, first the Kesed, the crown is in, but the same, but the shame. The 630 commandments, together with the 7 rabbinic commandments, correspond to the Tarach, the 620 pillars of light, the level of Kesed. Second, eternity, since Kesser contains within it a dimension connected to the Ein Sof. That is why the term Ein Sof refers to the divine light that extends infinitely, even though the divine essence itself cannot be described in that way. Third, limit, like Ad Pasava, this refers to the fact that in Kesser there is no comprehension at all. Because the union of Abba ve'ima draws from this level of Kesser, it is called Mishkan Eidus in the sense of Adiyah Daim, encompassing all 3 meanings above. This is also the meaning of the pasuk Shisham al-Shvatim, where the through it, the Sada, the way from below the tribes elevate themselves to draw down this level of Eidus, the crowns, into Yisrael, meaning it's at such a level there can only be acknowledgement that since comprehension does not apply there. This is the meaning of Ashi Bakat Apimation. The union of Abba ve'ima in the first pasuk Krishma comes to bittul, which is higher than love. Love belongs to Zah, and therefore appears in the pasuk V'Havta. But the first pasuk Krishma contains the large ayin and dal, spelling Ad, referring to the union of Abba ve'ima, the level called Mishkan Eidus. In truth, the union achieved in Krishma reaches upward until the infinite itself is explained in Priyat Chaim, and this is also called Yuchud Kishbrichu Shchinte, the true Mishkan Eidus. The meaning of Eidus, testimony, and Adi crown are not contradictory. Above, the light of Keser itself is drawn down, but within Atzilus, only a radiance from it can shine. In the future, however, the essential light will be revealed. word pocket also alludes to dafak, the pulse, which comes to the level of chachma, clothed within the blood, which root is in the inner dimension of bina. This is related to the 365 negative commandments, which correspond to the 365 sinews of the body. The pulse of the heart carries a deeper internal illumination for the brain, while the pulse of the hand reflects a more external aspect. This also relates to Pekudei and to the concept of Pekudei, whose root is in Keser, as in Pekudei Pekudei. The spiritual service, the pulse of the heart corresponds to the rhythm of ascent and return. Through this movement, the divine response is drawn from above, correlated Defik. And Pekudei that precedes Krishma corresponds to the Pekudei that precedes Krishma corresponds to the service of the Levium, who elevate the Mishkan through song. In the same way, the praises of Pekudei elevate the level of Zun upward to the level of Mishkan. Oed is the union of Av Ve'ima, which occurs in the first pasuk of Shema. This is the meaning of Avat Levi Hu. Afterward, the light is drawn downward. Oed is the Yisrael. This is hinted in the letters Esmach in the first pasuk, referring to the joy of the union of Av Ve'ima with Zon. But the ultimate goal is V'divartam, speaking words of Torah. This is the meaning of Pekudei Summary. Summary refers to speech that emerges automatically. Itmar refers to speech that emerges automatically, like Aniyah Mishnah with the best Flicha. It is also connected to Ben Aaron, since Aaron represents Avarabba, which appears in the pasuk of Yehavta. Through that love, the power is given for the awakening from below, enabling the whole process of divine service. Summary of Parsha Pekudei. The pasuk Eila Pekudei Mishkan refers to two different unifications of the divine structure. One, Pekudei Mishkan, the union of Vavke Zon. Pekudei HaMishkan refers to the union of Zerampen and Malchus Vavke of the Nemavaya. This union is drawn down through Torah study and positive commandments. The word Pekudei hints to visitation, union, Levka Desishte, Eila equals 36, corresponding to the 6 attributes of Zayt, containing 6. 6 orders of Mishnah also reflect a structure. Positive commandments draw down divine light to the vessel, similar to the direct comprehension of divine light. This level is called Eila Pekudei Mishkan, the functioning of the Mishkan within the revealed divine structure. In daily prayer, this corresponds to the pasuk V'yohavta which expresses love generated through understanding the emotional level of Zah. 2, Mishkan is the union of Yudke Ava. Mishkan is refers to the higher union of Ab V'im Yudke of the Mavaya. This union is drawn through negative commandments, bittul, self-nullification, the level of Chachma. Chachma is ayin, pure nullification, where Ein Sof shines in a way that cannot be grasped. Bina, however, produces love and emotional comprehension, which still belong to the realm of Yesh. The relation from Chachma into Bina is what the Rambam calls knowledge through negation. We know God by denying limitation, not by grasping his essence. This is why negative commandments operate through removal and negation. They remove concealments. Through this high union, Ava is revealed. Therefore, this testimony is called Adis. This level is called Adis testimony. A witness indicates something hidden without revealing its essence. Connection to Keser Adiyadayim, the level of Mishkan. And this also relates to Adiyadayim, 2 crowns drawn from Keser. The word Adi has contains 3 meaning: a dormant crown, the level of Keser; Adiyah, the eternity, because Keser contains the trace of the infinite; limit at Paisava, because the essence cannot be grasped. These crowns are drawn into Zah and Malchus, where there is complete bittul, the role of Krishma. In daily prayer, both unions appear. The first verse is Shema Shema Yisrael. This corresponds to Mishkan Adis, the union of Ava, expressed to complete bittul. This is why the letters of Ayin and Dal and Shema and Shema and Achad are enlarged, spelling Ad. In the later verse for Hafta Shem L'Kacha, this corresponds to Pekudei Mishkan, the union of Zon, expressed as love of Hashem. Pakad, the pulse, Dafak, the word Pakad also hints to Dafak pulse. The pulse represents the rhythm of Ratzib Shev, expansion and contraction. Spiritually, this reflects Ratzei, longing upward, Bina, blood, Shuv, returning in humility, Chachma Bittul. This rhythm allows the revelation of the higher union. Pekudei Zimra, the work of Levium. Songs correspond to the service of Levium who sang while carrying the Mishkan. Their song elevates the lower union zone upward to connect with the higher union Ava. Only after this preparation can one reach the level of bittul of Shema. Torah, the vessel for the revelation. After the union of Shema comes V'divartam, Torah speech becomes the vessel for the divine light. This is called Pekudei Summary, meaning speech that emerges with such bittul that it becomes God's word spoken through the person. The overall structure of the process is 1, Pekudei Zimra, elevation, service to Levium; 2, Shema Yisrael, the union of Ab Ve'ima, Mishkan Ages to bittul; 3, V'havta, the union of Pekudei Mishkan of Zon, Pekudei Mishkan through love; and 4, V'divartam Torah as a vessel for the revelation.